Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to try and make some other Pokemon card art with energy cards. And this is specifically the second try because last time I tried to make a Zorua and it actually worked out pretty well, but I wanted to try a completely different method next time. So here you see me placing down just some mild tape. This is actually some painter's tape. And I'm placing it onto this like foil plastic sheet so I can pull it back off and it will still stick. And then I'm just using some PVA glue to glue down my template. Like last time I traced one of my favorite card arts that already exist of this Pokemon and just made it have this stained glass like optic. And I want to try and like basically have all the pieces like completely templated out instead of piecing them piece by piece. So I'm gluing this onto the tape and making sure that all the air bubbles are out and that the glue spread evenly with my roller. And then it was time to cut this out with my knife. And I'm just cutting away basically all of the excess first before then cutting out all the pieces piece by piece, like last time, just so I can then place them onto the energy cards. This also helps with, first of all, reserving some material, I think, because if I can place all of them down first, I don't have to like worry about the placement for the next piece. I think last time I used a bit too much of the other card, just because I wasn't quite sure what I need or things like that. But in this case, you know, with having the pieces before and then being able to like stick them down onto the cards, I can see exactly how much space I need. And also, like last time, I'm trying to incorporate the gradient to like make it make sense in the places that it is, just so like that the lighting makes sense. Plus I have some larger pieces, and again, like the orange gradient to the like whitish color for example, the fire energy is pretty large, so trying to avoid it would be super hard. So instead I'm just embracing it and using it as like a feature. And I actually managed to place all the pieces I needed onto two cards because I needed a fire and a fighting energy for the colors I needed. So I used some of the like more yellowy, whitish tones for my highlights, and then for the shadows, obviously I'm going to use like more of the darker reddish tones. And I'm also going to get the eye in this like very bright yellowy color. And this time I'm not gonna try to like make the eye look different or like on the card. I'm gonna try to make the eye like just with a little highlight that I'm gonna paint on, and just with the like colors the cards give. And the same I'm going to do with the nose. I'm not gonna cut it out like last time. Those details are way too tiny, and I decided, since it looked really wonky last time, that probably like painting them on with a dotting tool is gonna be the best like course of action. And then it was of course time to cut out all the pieces, and this time I'm cutting them all out at once. And again, I'm using like very teeny tiny stabby motions, and sometimes if the piece is straight enough, I do cut like with multiple more shallow cuts to get cleaner edges. But again, with like a lot of the pieces, they are very rounded, so just like carefully cutting away by like basically stabbing the tip of the knife carefully around the object. It's giving me much more control and, you know, making the edges look way nicer. And cutting these pieces out was again very time consuming. But in this case also, since like I had the outlines of the tape, it was definitely a bit easier because last time, as you know, I traced the pieces all separately, and that meant that like sometimes it was really hard to see the outlines. But in this case, with having like the paper on top or like the green tape to mark the edges. Not only was it easier like to follow the outline, but I could also see better which piece was which. But yeah, here you can see in real time how long it took for like one tiny piece to be cut out. And you can see I'm really taking my time trying to have the edges clean with like no like frizz or whatever you want to call it. So like no like small paper bits or card bits that stick out on the side. Just, you know, trying to make the cuts as clean as possible. And since I did the previous card and had some practice, this one definitely looks a bit better. There's still like a tiny bit of an edge, just because, again, the card is way too thick. And I'm wondering if maybe a different brand of cutting knife, like a higher grade one, would be better or something. Because mine is actually a pretty decent brand and decently sharp, but I know there's some for like model building that are really like high end, and maybe their blades may not dull as quickly, because I did have the feeling that the more I did this project, the like more dull my blade became. Like not too noticeably, but like the further I got in, the more I had the feeling that like the paper was like fraying underneath. So I actually did sharpen my blade once, but yeah, again, I wonder if like a different brand or a more high-end thing would help with this issue. But for like the beginning, this blade actually worked out perfectly, and again, like a lot of this is probably also practice. And you know, if I would pursue this craft more often, I would likely try and find a good branded blade that like works a little bit better, but for my intents and purposes, this is more than enough right now. Now, after cutting all the pieces, it was finally time to place them down. So, of course, I first started off by painting all along the edges, and then I carefully removed the top, like tape it. Some of the edges, as you can see, like they soak in the paint of the paint marker a little bit more than I wanted to, but I think in this case it kind of fits. And you know, I chose a like darker red than the like darker thread I had in this case and things like that, just to like highlight the outlines. And then for the rest of the like lines that like make it look like stained glass, I'm going to like indent them with my bolt tool at the end again, and hopefully that will look good. Now there was still some teeny tiny gaps between some of the pieces, and that's just because some of them were super intricate, and even though I really tried my best to like place them and like cut them pretty much exactly to what my template shows, you know, it's just user error, so to speak, and there was always some teeny tiny gaps, but they were like so small in comparison, and like considering how much less effort it was comparing to last time I tried to actually get them to fit, it was definitely worth trying out this technique. Now I did go in on the tail. I had like one piece that was overlapping way too much, and I only noticed after I tried and glued this down. I guess this was probably because of like the edges not being clean enough of all the pieces together, that it got like pushed out, so I had to kind of go in with my blade and cut there a little bit, which sadly I accidentally scratched the background card just a teeny tiny bit, but I think it's okay. Like, you know, it's really not that noticeable, and like once the entire like Pokemon is done, I have to hope that the focus will just be on the Pokemon. But since I placed the other pieces down, like I tried to lift them off, but I'm using like a kind of epoxy glue here, so this one will just stick forever in places where I probably put down the glue. So yeah, sadly I couldn't transfer it again, but again, I don't think it was too bad, so that it would like ruin the entire piece. And as you can see, like the highlights with the whiter and the more orange tones definitely match the like piece really well, and I love the gradient. It has like almost like a glowy look in my opinion, like what we get from these gradients towards like the head and things like that and in the tail. And again, I hope that more and more details will be showing once I add the paint and then the lines. And here you can see me just use my ballpoint pen, and I'm just like dipping it into acrylic paint and trying to like carefully paint the nose, the mouth, and then the eyes. And then I noticed that like one of the ears was loose, and I guess the glue must have dried like mostly before I could place it down, since I placed down like very tiny amounts of glue to like not have it run out of the sides. And after I fixed that, I could finally go ahead with my ballpoint tool to like indent all of the lines I wanted to indent to get this stained glass effect. And I also went along some of the edges a tiny bit between the pieces just to make sure that like those would be a bit more rounded also, because right now there are some pretty sharp edges, and again I wanted more of this like even stained glass effect. But yeah, I had some pieces, again the glue dried way too quickly on them, so I had to place them down again, but they weren't as loose as that it would like ruin anything, so it was totally fine. And overall, like, I struggled a tiny bit to get the curves indented, but again, that's just due to my steady hand. But I think the stained glass look in this one also turned out pretty well. And like with the gradient, it looks so lovely. But yeah, here you can see the final results, and I have to say I absolutely love it. The Zoro I made for the first try already turned out really cute, but this Vulpix turned out absolutely amazing, and I just love the look of the eye with like the natural like card-driven gradient and like the really almost glassy look of the body with the gradient. I gave that as well. But yeah, overall this technique definitely was easier to manage than the other one, and again, although both cards definitely turned out well, but I have the feeling like I embraced the like limitations and benefits of the energy cards a little bit more in this piece than in the last one. But yeah, again, both of them were kind of experiments, and in this case I have to say the second one with the tape template definitely worked out way better than the first one with cutting out piece by piece and then placing it together before gluing it down. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this piece. And of course, as always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!